This is Finance Career Launch, the show that helps you own your career. This podcast is just one component of the Finance Career Launch member community, which provides the training and support to help you develop, contribute, and advance. If you're not yet a member, go ahead and register for no charge by visiting financecareerlaunch.com and clicking that big blue button. When you do that, you'll get instant access to the video series, The 7 Pillars of a Successful Career in Finance. Hey there, this is David Mariano, and you're listening to episode 72 of Finance Career Launch. If you're new here, welcome. It's great to have you. And if you've been around for a while, you know that I typically use these midweek episodes to cover a listener question or a small skill, habit, or mindset that will help you own your career. But today we'll be finishing out the 4-part series about becoming an investment banker. And in the first 3 weeks, we covered reasons why it's a great career path, the unique career paths within the industry, and then last week we hit some of the pros and cons of being in the business. And today, only because I get this question a lot, I'll be telling my story about how I became an investment banker, filling you in on some of the things that I did along the way to get into the business, and then just some of upon reflecting, I'll cover some of the things that I think went well for me, things that I did well, things that I maybe didn't do so well, both in the search process and when I got into the industry and actually was working in the business. Okay, so to start, I went to Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. This for many of you who come asking about this profession, you have the same situation where you do not go to a target school. I did not go to a target school. Today, there are more people who have come out of there and gone into investment banking than when I was there, but it still is not a target school and definitely wasn't 15 years ago. My GPA, because again, people ask me, I don't say any of this stuff to brag or to talk about myself, but people ask, so here's the full story. I had a GPA of about 3.8 when I started the process, and at the time, and now that is really average for the profession. We're competing with people from Ivy League schools, from bigger programs, or even just really smart people from all walks of life, all types of schools. So a 3.8 is kind of average. When you look at the range, 3.5 is probably low for the industry. And then, people with 3.8s, 3.9s are very common. So 3.5 is not a low GPA in general, but I'm saying for this, getting into this business out of college or out of an MBA program, that is kind of the low end. I had an accounting major. There was no finance degree at the time at Case Western, but in the end, it ended up working out probably the best because having that accounting knowledge, that basic understanding of how the 3 financial statements fit together really helped in building financial models, and I think it really was the better way to go for me anyway, but it wasn't, it was really a matter of what was available at the time for me. Case now does have a finance major, but at the time they had either accounting, economics, or you could major in management and concentrate in a certain area, but for me, that was only 3 classes of concentration, and that wasn't enough depth for me. I went for depth over the right term, meaning finance. The only other thing I want to mention about that, my background there, is I was captain of the wrestling team in high school. I did wrestle in college, and I was the president of my fraternity in college. And I mention this because I think these things did resonate with people in the end. It showed that I was into competitive sports. I was disciplined. I could work hard. And being, captain and president of certain things, it shows that I could get elected by my peers into a leadership position. So those things I do think helped me in the end get noticed, and it did make me stand out. So when people ask me about extracurriculars, I don't tend to be the one who would tell you to be involved in a lot of different things. I would always prefer someone to be very invested in a couple things, excel at a couple things, be in a leadership position in a few things. But again, that's just my opinion. Someone else may tell you something different, but it worked for me. Okay, so I had no idea that investment banking was even an option for several years. I just got lucky that one of my fraternity brothers, a classmate of mine, was working at a local M&A boutique here in Cleveland, and he asked me about the business. I don't know why he asked me if I would be interested in it, but he did. And he said, yeah, here's what it's about. He gave me a couple books to read. I mean, the typical books, Monkey Business and Liar's Poker. I think they're entertaining books I mentioned last week. Definitely intriguing to a young guy looking to get into a competitive industry and do well. But I actually honestly feel that the most helpful book I read back then, and it had just come out when I was in college, was a book called The Big Deal by Bruce Wasserstein. He's since passed away, but was kind of a big name in the investment banking industry in New York for many years. Had, his name was in firm names and everything, Wasserstein Perella. And I feel like that it's a big book. It's probably 2 inches thick, and it really walks you through the business, the industry, and even how deals are done. So I would highly recommend The Big Deal by Bruce Wasserstein to you if you're interested in the business. In addition to reading those books, I also started researching things online. Now, this was 1998. There was no Wall Street Oasis. There was no mergers and acquisitions. There was no Wall Street prep courses. But I really like to learn about new things. And I am able to, and I still am able to research things to the end of the earth, sometimes it feels like, and I read a lot. So if you are interested, I always recommend to people just read as much as you possibly can. And when you think you've read enough, keep digging and digging and digging, because that's what I did. I just searched endlessly online. There was no Google even back then. It was all sorts of other search engines. And I was able to find just a couple things that laid out the industry, laid out what financial modeling was, and certain things that it just helped me, help guide me to what to pay attention to. Today, there are much more helpful resources out there that can point you in the right direction. Now, this is more to the younger people, but I would have bought the courses if they existed. I would have definitely invested in Wall Street prep. I've heard from people that it's expensive. It's really not. In the end, if you're serious about being in this business, your signing bonus, you'll easily be able to pay that stuff back. If you truly believe that you can get into the business, you should take those courses. You should invest in them. I get nothing for saying that right now, but they're good courses. They will help you understand the analytical side of things, which isn't everything, as I've said before, but it is important when you're starting out. And no matter what, those sites, soak them up as much as you can, read every single article that is written, and generate questions from it. Even if there's something in there that you don't like, you don't agree with, you don't think seems real, write it down, make it a question, and then when you talk to people, which is what I'll talk about next, you can have great questions based in some form of reality, or at least you can say, hey, I've heard this about the industry. Is that really true? Is that really how it goes? And it'll just give you some ideas and show that you're really interested and have done some research. Okay, next is, despite being a not a target school, even back then, no matter what, there were definitely people who ended up in investment banking or at institutions where there was investment banking so they could help connect me to the right people, or at least tell me what their life was like. So there was my fraternity brother at a local M&A boutique. There was at least one person at Goldman. There were people at Morgan Stanley. There were several people at JP Morgan. And there was a guy named Bob Perkins at McDonald Investments, which is a pretty big regional Midwestern firm back then. And hold on to his name on the side. We'll get to him in a second. But all that to say, no matter what school you go to, chances are that there are people like that, and you just have to reach out to them. You have to be bold. You have to give them a reason to want to help you in your approach. And, you just have to chase them down and learn as much as you possibly can. That's what I did, and it was super helpful. Not one of those people wasn't helpful to me. they weren't all able to get me interviews or, the things that you think are all that important. But no matter what, they all talked to me and they all helped me understand more about the business and get me ready for real interviews. Okay, how did I make the approach? Some people I was able to get to because someone else knew them and it was a warm introduction. Other people, honestly, I heard of their name through the career office or other professors, and I just contacted them to learn about what they did. Back then, there was no email, or there wasn't a lot of email. We had an email address, but honestly, some of these companies did not all have email addresses back then. So sometimes I sent letters and followed it up with a phone call. So today, what I would do is send an email just to introduce myself, let them know what I was thinking, and then follow that up with a phone call. It's so critical. You cannot just send an email. You have to also get on the phone and show them that you are serious about getting to know the business. The other thing is I was told in hindsight, and I did this on purpose, I really try to make it easy for them to say yes and want to help you. In other words, I made it really hard to say no. So if I wanted to get together in person, I paid for their meals or coffee, or at least I offered. Most of them didn't let me do that, but I sincerely said, no, I'll pay for your coffee. I'll pay for whatever. And whenever it was possible, I went to them. I went downtown Cleveland. I went to New York several times. I went to Chicago. I went to people, met them where they were, said, I'll meet you anytime. I'll be there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or I'll be there, whatever, Thursday and Friday this week. When can you meet, even just for 20 minutes, and show them you're serious and that you really want to get into the business and learn. And I can't stress that enough, that these are not overtures to get an interview. They are not requests for a job, for an internship. They are completely requests to learn about what people do, make it very easy. You have to be politely persistent. You can't be too aggressive or people will, kind of be turned off by it. So you have to do it in the right way. But just, again, ask for help, and most people are willing to help you. These are people that went to your same school. They should want to, give back at some level. The other thing I did is followed through and followed up in a couple different ways. After I would meet with them, I would send a handwritten thank you note. I still do that today with new potential business prospects or just even other relationships in the business community that I've met for the first time. Not many people do that, so take the time to do it and you'll definitely stand out. The other thing is I did what I said I would do. Say at the end of the conversation, we agreed to, if someone said, hey, send me your resume or send me an email that tells me more about yourself, I would do that. And you do that promptly. You follow up on exactly what you agreed to. If they said, hey, I will do something for you within a week, you follow up with them if they haven't done it. You just need to show that you can make and keep commitments. That's all part of the process. And if you can do that, you build credibility and you're building the relationship with these people, whether or not they end up in anything, end up to be anything in the long term. No matter, you're still building a relationship, and that's an important part of it. The other thing is keep these people updated. If they're willing to help you, they're interested enough in wanting to hear that, number one, you either took their advice if they asked you to do something or told you to do something or recommended that you read a book or do something else. And second, they're interested enough in you that they're happy to hear, hey, even if they didn't get you an interview or an internship, reach out to them and say, hey, just want to let you know, we met a couple months ago, but here's where I ended up. Here's what I'm doing. Thank you very much for your help again. It was, it was extremely helpful in me doing well in this interview, whatever. No matter what, continue to update them on your progress and continue to give credit where credit is due to those people. They'll really appreciate that, and you'll remember it, and you keep these relationships much longer, and they'll, no matter what, it'll pay off in the end. Okay, earlier I mentioned the name Bob Perkins, and he was at McDonald Investments at the time. I called him, again, out of the blue, like a lot of other people. He did know a similar person that I did, we had a common relationship, but not real close. And this is the guy that I was able to get into the business through. There were a lot of other people that I tried with, but in the end, I ended up my first position, my first internship was at McDonald Investments, which is now part of KeyBank Capital Markets. And it was because I called this guy Bob. He was a Case grad, but his MBA, so wasn't even an undergrad student there. But I was able to, get his contact information and called him and sent him an email. And to this day, it's really funny when he and I talk about it. We're still friends. He says, for whatever reason, I'd received a lot of those calls or a lot of those emails or messages or letters. For whatever reason, when you called me, you made me not want to hang up on you. That's what he said to me a few times, which still makes me laugh. And as I've asked him more about it, it really just had to do with the approach that I talked about before. I sincerely wanted to just come in, ask him some questions. All I wanted was 20 minutes. That's it. I didn't ask for an interview. I didn't ask for anything other than, hey, I have some specific questions. And he did say, well, you can ask me now over the phone. And I said, I have a couple, but I would love to, meet you in person. It's always just helpful to, have a better conversation in person. I'll come downtown, and I did everything I said earlier. And it ended up that for whatever reason that day, it ended up being an interview. Some of it was luck and timing and when I called and what that group was looking for. But I went downtown. I went in my suit anyway, even though it was just, to me, it really was an informational interview. And I didn't know until I got there that he had set up a series of other conversations with the other 4 people in the group. And that ended up landing me an internship for the summer. And the rest is kind of history. I mean, some of the people that were in that group I still talk to, and one of the guys specifically I still work with today. I mean, he was an associate then, and now he's one of the founding partners of my firm. So that's kind of how I got into the business. I want to just touch on a couple things about during that search, upon reflecting what went right and then what I did wrong. And then I also want to touch on just looking at my career since then, what has gone right and what I think I could have done better. So during the search, I think one of the things that allowed me to get in is I was focused. I decided that I wanted to be in this business, and I talked to anyone who would tell me about it. I read any book, article, website that had anything to do about it, and I just read and constantly soaked up the information as much as possible. I asked a lot of questions, and I did it so much that I really understood the business. And it gave me confidence, honestly. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm the most confident, person or the person with the best presence in a room, but at that time, I had researched it so much, especially compared to my peers at the school where I was. I definitely stood out because I understood the business a lot better. When I was talking to alumni, some of them even sent me models, just if that was what I was interested in. They sent me a dummy model, and I was able to play with it and learn about that. I was just relentless in researching and contacting people. And I would also say I learned each person I talked to and each thing I read, I kind of built on top of that knowledge. So I'd talk to a person, I'd ask some questions, I'd learn from that, I'd continue to research, and then each time my questions got better, and those answers and questions built on each other. Okay, a couple things that I didn't do so well. I did not stay in touch with everyone on that initial contact list, despite what I tell you and what I do today. Then I did not stay in touch with everyone on that contact list, and I really should have. Several I have, but just not everyone, and it would have been a good idea. And I, in prepping for this, I will probably reach out to most of those people now that just to rekindle those relationships. In the end, I ended up in the middle market, which is good. I think it was right for me anyway, but if I'm being honest, I bombed some of the interviews with the large investment banks. I tried for some internships there. I tried for some full-time positions, and I just did not do well. So just the only thing I can attribute it to is I was very nervous. I was not cool or calm under pressure, and that's not something that I think comes naturally to me. I've gotten better at it over time, but back then I was not ready to be grilled, and I was not ready for some of the pressure that comes with some of the questions that people would ask me, and just the part of the story that is most memorable to me is when I was being asked a question, and part of me didn't really understand the question. They were digging into this technical piece, and I think at a certain point I just stopped really understanding, and so I asked them to re-ask it, and I tried a couple times, but at some point I was so, I think, shaken up that I said, "What are you getting at?" And I actually said that in an interview. So don't do that. It doesn't make it won't work out well for you. So all that to say, I bombed several interviews, 2 that I can remember really well, and I did really well at some others. So you can end up in a fine position, but if you, depending on where you want to go, you just need to be ready for certain things. And I would say no matter what, you can never really be fully prepared. So I would walk in, have some fun with it as much as you can, as much pressure as there is. You need to have some fun with it. You need to be prepared, and keep your composure. That's one of the big things. People want to know that they can work with you and that you won't that you can be cool under pressure. So that's one big mistake I made, but I think it ended up okay anyway. All right, during my career, just this last section to wrap up, some things I did very right as a continuation of the interview and recruitment process. I continue to work hard in research to the ends of the earth, many different things when I got to the work. I mean, when I got to the internship and then full-time, I'm able to, and I enjoy researching tirelessly. And when you first start out in this business, that definitely helps. Just getting to the quick answer usually isn't enough. That's why I stress being, intellectually curious and insatiably curious. Usually that first quick answer you get is not enough. So tirelessly researching things. What's very frustrating sometimes when I give a project to someone is when they say, "Oh, there's nothing in that space. There's nothing there." And I know that's not true because I've done it. And also when, you only spend a day on something, sometimes it's not enough. So, that really worked out well for me. And it's an essential piece of the business when you start out, is the ability to research and really get to the right information. And sometimes it just takes a lot of time and digging and knowing how to navigate certain databases and even just the internet at this point. The other thing I would say that I did well is just having an attitude of perpetual personal improvement. That was a mouthful. But I've always wanted to be better, wanted to get better at things, and not everyone does that. And I've always, prided myself and worked hard to get better at certain things. I want critical feedback. I want people to tell me what I'm not doing well, and sometimes it's hard to get that out of people that, want to be encouraging and want to be positive. But I would seek feedback and take it and do as much as I could to get better at wherever I wasn't performing. And I still do that today. And that's something that I think serves you well. The last thing I'll say about what I get right is I got things right. I am very detail oriented. At that early level, you need to get things right. You are in charge of the numbers. You are in charge of the research, all the information that goes into books. It's not that I didn't make mistakes, but I strove for perfection and strove for getting things very right. As the analyst on the team, that is your job. And so I did pretty well at that. Now, the flip side of that, what did I get wrong, or where could I have done better? I gave my life to the job for many years, and that led me to not really take great care of myself. Now, I'll be honest, this is a double-edged sword. Part of the reason I did so well is because I really threw myself into the work. I was tireless. I, searched to the ends of the earth. I got things right. However, I do think there's a limit to that. Everyone has a limit, and I didn't think enough about myself. I didn't care enough about my health, my well-being to even try to seek where that limit was within myself. So I probably could have backed off a couple things, or I probably could have decided at a certain point that I had researched something enough. I wasn't very good at applying the 80-20 rule. That's still, that's a great rule of thumb, and I wasn't very good at applying that. So there's a double-edged sword to the working hard thing. You can make yourself burn out in several different ways. The other thing I would say is just I had some false expectations of what the success and money would do for me as a person, how that would make me feel. And I worry a lot about this for people, for you, if you're interested in this industry. If that's the reason you're interested in it, you might end up disappointed. Yes, you can do very well, but you can do very well, as I've said time and time again, and other people on this show have said, you can do very well in many areas of finance, and it doesn't have to be investment banking. It doesn't have to be private equity. It doesn't have to be hedge funds or whatever. Be careful about how much you think that stuff will make you happy, because I tell you what, I did very well. I'm not saying this to be arrogant. I did it well by my early mid-20s, and it didn't really get me to where I needed to be. I needed to kind of break free of some stuff of that and, reconnect with the work in a different way so that I actually enjoyed what I was doing and didn't focus so much on the rewards, didn't focus so much on myself versus other people. And, I've been much happier since I've figured that out. So just be careful of that. If that's what if you're too competitive with yourself and other people, you can end up hurting yourself and not being a great teammate in the end. The other side of that for me is I didn't realize that once I had proved myself, once I had been hired, once I even had those first couple of years under my belt, I didn't realize that I could begin to develop my own style. And I mean that to say I still looked to other people that I worked with, or other, senior people or people in the industry. I wanted to be like them. I thought I had to be like them to do well in this business. And I've since learned that that's just not the case. There is not a cookie cutter. You don't have to look exactly like the next guy. And that may be very, very self-evident to some of you. To other people, you may know exactly what I'm getting at. I mean, you can't be other people. And for me, I thought that I had to fit into this mold. And it is a business sometimes that makes you feel that way. And other people can make you feel that way on purpose. But I'm here to tell you that that's not true. I've kind of started to figure out my own style and how I relate to people, how I connect, and how I build relationships. And no matter what, that will serve me better in the long run than trying to be like someone else. Just a couple more things here. As I got promoted, I did not let go of certain things. I did not think about how to delegate. I did not let go of the detail. I got very comfortable with doing certain things, and I didn't try to advance in ways that made me feel uncomfortable, in ways that I may make mistakes. So just keep that in mind as you advance. No matter what, people that do well, they make mistakes. They may not tell you about it because of their ego or because of, trying to protect their own image. But I promise you, anyone who's done well in any field, they've made a lot of mistakes. And the reason they look good now is because they've made those mistakes 5, 10, 15, 25 years ago. Last thing I'll say is I did not work on networking and communication skills until a little bit later. Yes, I mentioned that I do have a habit of personal improvement. Those things are important to me, but networking, communication skills are two that I didn't work on enough early enough. And part of that's because I was in the office too much. I didn't get out of my chair. I didn't talk to enough people. But another side of that is I just didn't think about it. I didn't realize, or I did not convince myself that I should work on those things then. I kind of put it off and focused on some of the things, again, that were easier. I think this is probably related to the last point where I was comfortable. I wanted to be great at what I was doing. I didn't want to make mistakes. And For me to dive into networking, dive into bettering myself on the communication side would have required me to make mistakes, and I just wasn't ready to do that until a little bit later. So that was a little bit longer than I wanted to go, but I hope that was helpful. Definitely let me know if you have questions. But otherwise, that's the end of this series about becoming an investment banker, and I hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you again soon.